Welcome to Agile World. It's been a while. Hello, Carl.
Hello, Sabrina. Have you been on holiday the whole year?
You ask me this every single time. I've been a very, very busy lady. I am going to point out that I purchased you an Agile World t-shirt. You're not wearing it. Yeah, thank you.
I,
Do
what
I
can
need to
I
go about
say?
the again?
Obviously I love the logo since I designed them, but okay. So we can all do that.
Hey, where's ours?
Ah,
Well, when we see you, we'll give you some because these ones are giveaways. Um, but the black ones you have to be a volunteer with the charity to get. Yeah, we'll give you some when we see you. Yeah, so that's I have no excuses for not wearing the t-shirt. My apologies, Sabrina.
that's fine. We can discuss that later. But it's nice to be back again recording, and it's lovely to be with our friends from JCURV. I hope you guys are well with a really interesting topic. So I'm going to hand over to the guys to introduce themselves, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. So, Michael Connor, I'm a director at JCURV and I specialize in product and agile transformations. And then, gang, do you want to introduce yourselves? Then we can talk about what we're going to share.
Yeah, sure. So, hi guys, I'm Emily Merkel, manager at JCURV. We specialize in everything from product to strategy, a bit of data. Happy to be joining you guys today.
Hi, and then I'm Pyle. I'm one of the MDs at JCURV. And actually, the two projects that we're talking about today and deep diving on, I've been involved in both of those. And, just they're amazing examples of agility. So we're excited to be here.
Oh, no, thank you very much for joining us. It's really exciting. Right. Well, let's kick off. What is the subject? What have we been doing?
Yeah, well, so I can kind of frame both and why we want to talk about these, and then I think we'll kind of take each in turn. So we've been on Agile World before. You kind of know who we are, and we just wanted to then come back and share some of our most recent work that we're really proud of in two hot topics. So the first is some of our recent work where we have used our approach, this focus on agility, in defining an agile AI strategy. And then the second is then how we've brought agility into defining a strategy in the healthcare space, focused on cancer detection. So two massive topics. AI, everyone's talking about it. Just every other story in the newspaper is on about it, and healthcare is huge. And particularly cancer detection is also being talked about in the private and NHS space. And yeah, we want to take this opportunity to kind of talk through what we've done there.
Cool. Okay.
Not both very close to our hearts and both really interesting subjects. So go for it. Kick it off. Let's hear about this.
Yeah, so I talk about what we've done in the AI space. So a bit of a set up the context. One of our clients that we've been lucky enough to work with over the last few years, focusing on ways of working. It's a data team, so we've been working with the CDO and his area to better connect the data team with business strategy and actually utilizing agile delivery principles at a team level, a portfolio level, to better connect his teams into the biggest problems that the business is facing, or the biggest challenges and opportunities. And we've had a great success of working with them over the last few years. And during that time, formed a really positive relationship that they're willing to then share some of their more recent challenges, which are there's increased attention, increased demands on what are we doing in the AI space. So this is the data area. Everyone's coming to the CDO and saying, right, what is our AI agenda? Where's the value in AI? What are we doing already? Now, the CDO of this company, and it's an automotive company. It's not a car manufacturer, but it's in the kind of servicing space in the automotive sector. The CDO it's having this challenging pressure that's being applied in terms of what's the value that we're getting from AI without actually stepping back and exploring what are the questions that we want AI to answer. Actually, what are the biggest opportunities, the biggest challenges that the organization is facing, and then let's figure out how AI can tap into those, rather than, I think there's a bit of a prevalent mood where AI is always the answer without and actually exploring, well, what do we want to do with that and where do we want it to play? And so we were lucky enough to be invited to support them in defining their strategy to actually understand how they want to apply AI across their enterprise, across their organization, over the next few years. So
Can
that
I
was a
ask
bit
a
of
question?
the
Because there's like 7 different types of AI.
I was
Oh,
going to ask that.
yeah,
And everyone's focused on large language models, and I
yeah,
understand why, because they've suddenly become available. But AI has been around since the sort of 1970s, in one form or another. Um, I can understand why they want to use advanced analytics to try and
yeah.
understand their data models, which might be something that they might try not to use it, but there's an IBM system that does that really well. It's rather expensive. Why? What kinds of AIs were they interested in? And you rightly said that AI shouldn't lead the conversation; it should be problem solving. It does. So the problems. Can you tell us what the problem statements were, uh, without revealing the
Yes,
client,
yes.
and also point to what AIs they kind of felt answered those
Yeah.
problems?
So actually, even in your question there, you're kind of revealing one of the problems they were facing because the AI was used as this broad umbrella, and um, so I think part of the need was to establish, well, what do we mean when we talk about AI in this context, in terms of the challenges the organization is facing, and let's actually educate at a leadership level, and then at an organizational level, and then figure out when we talk about AI, where does it play? So that was one because I think there was about myth busting and understanding at a leadership level. Well, okay, when we're talking about it, we need to understand where we play and where we don't. So that was challenge number one, and the CDO and team head of data science definitely wanted to kind of land that point about let's educate and let's differentiate between them. And as part of the journey that we went on, it was also establishing, well, what are some of those biggest challenges and what type of AI applies? Now, a lot of it was then in the efficiency space and operational space, which is more what you'd probably say is more traditional AI,
Yeah.
very machine learning led or predictive or rules based, and then adding a bit of sophistication. But it was also then looking, well, what kind of future areas do we want to tap into that where we might need larger language models to answer. And so that was part of the first thrust when carrying out this strategy. Let's actually establish the challenges, the opportunities, and then let's figure out what types of AI apply. And predominantly in the nearer term, it is around operational efficiencies, where a lot of it is customer servicing. So one case study that we start to focus on and we've developed out detail was about how can we better drive efficiencies in the telephony call center to and working initially, and this is we kind of wanted to, our principle here was around thinking big, but actually starting small and getting real learnings to inform the long-term picture. So we went in the telephony space, working with then the QA team to figure out, okay, well, how can we use AI to better analyze the calls and the call quality that then can speed up that process of identifying learnings and trends in our customers' behavior. And there's a bunch of stuff there that there's how can we better get the insight on how our agents are performing and give them then the development and training to improve that one. But then there's also what are we hearing from the customers? What are some of their needs that is actually going to point to then how we then think more broad about our strategy. So that was one area that we looked at in the telephony space, which is pretty cool because it's so we could immediately get launched and live, get feedback.
It's nice to hear that you've done it in that way because I know a lot of organizations probably just use AI to almost, instead of just for improvement, is just actually for cost efficiency and actually using AI to actually replace
Yep.
certain functions that they have. And that's what most frustrates customers or people having to deal it because you never can get to the right area. So it's really nice to see that they are actually using it to actually make improvements internally, which is better out for the customer.
Yeah, and this is really cool. It's one of our principles about it's about doing more with the same and then tapping into other areas. And I think as an example, I think they were listening to, let's say, 5,000 calls a week. And this was actually side of desk where managers and across teams were having to free up the time to listen into calls to then pick out insights and then try and then somehow amidst their rest of their day jobs and management responsibilities, as well as them answering calls, then figure out training plans. So this was then suddenly we went in thinking assumption, oh, well, 10 times that number. We were then very rapidly, 30 times that number that we could listen to a week, pick out the insight in terms of then some of the trends of what customers are hearing, but also then illustrate what are some of the topics that agents might be struggling with. And actually that freed up time that managers had was then all about training and development plans, or actually listening to more or answering calls, using their time to answer more calls, so actually customers weren't waiting on the line. So it was a great example of doing more of the same, not looking to cost cut, but actually driving productivity improvements, and also then better upskilling agents, so they could have the more value adding conversations with clients.
I think what was really cool here is the kind of the approach of agility we used to then actually define the AI strategy. The whole thing for a big global business was done in 4 sprints. And so it's just amazing how iterative it was in some of the discovery, kind of bringing this test and learn approach into it, to say we're going to keep iterating until we land on the use cases that we think are the most important for the organization, in line with the vision and the intent, to all then defining, okay, and here's the value case and the investment case that you need. So it was really fast paced. We didn't kind of overthink it, but because you've almost got to instill, if you spend 6 months trying to define the use cases, by the time you finish your strategy, the world's moved on and actually the technology's outdated. And so we kind of brought in the pace to just make sure that we got through it quite quickly. And then, you can start to do the test and learn and see whether these use cases actually deliver what they say. Because as we all know with AI, there's still a lot of failure. And so it's kind of instilling that in the culture of the leaders to then just say, look, let's not strive for perfection here.
I was just about to say that actually, because I love the fact that you did actually go straight in with the test and learns, because a lot of organizations are very risk averse in one sense. So the fact is they're actually learning at the same time that actually we're going to trial something, we're going to learn from it, and integrating that straight away. And then these are the actual value benefits of it. And that's like the first key thing to be able to get an organization to understand, we can trial this stuff and it's okay. So I love the fact you've done that.
It also that test and learn approach is also, it's one of the principles we took, because we're originally talking about the full business case investment, that when dealing with AI, some of these numbers can be pretty scary, that then lead to a bit of which leads to over analysis, because then it's, if we're going to spend all this money, then we need to do a hell of a lot of theoretical research. So one of our principles is around getting to test and learn that then justifies further investment. So let's be conscious about what the full cost could be, but as this strategy was about, how can we quickly, what do we need at each stage to first get into action, that then gives you the indicators that will justify further investment.
But then it allows them to then prioritize, so that they, instead of getting overwhelmed, like this is all the stuff that actually would actually benefit you, it allows them to then prioritize, which then they are actually invested in. So it gives them I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So you used Agile as a logical process to engage.
Yeah.
You were able to qualify the actual requirement over the intent. The intent was to use Agile. The requirement was to receive a benefit from AI. Were you able to deliver an operational version of this for the client, for them to adopt? Because that's really the key job of a consultant, is to facilitate the client to be able to do this themselves to a certain extent, and then as they build out, they'll need more support, and you can go back in.
Yes. So the simple answer is yes to that question. So what was really cool in the way that this is a strategy piece that was combined with iterative delivery alongside that. So we worked hand in hand with this organization and the data team and the data science within that actually meant by towards the end of our support, we're actually piloting out some of these use cases, and it's a bit of kind of connection with string and tape to just prove that they could work. But our role was very much around facilitating and bringing the right people together. I think we never went in to say that we're expert data scientists. We kind of identified. I think the issue they were facing was, how do you then translate all that knowledge and illustrate to leaders who have heard about this thing that they think might sound simple? Hey, AI can solve all these problems. It was about, our role was to help connect across the organization. So you've got the experts are kind of, they're supporting that messaging, but they're also got that process to then take leaders along the journey and then actually illustrate, well, this is why we need this investment, and this is why we need this extra specialist resource to take that into practice. So we then very quickly, that example that I shared of the telephony case study or opportunity, we're able to then actually, by the end of this 8 to 10 week period of work, we had a working prototype that was then able to, that was doing something like double the amount of calls that they could do manually, that proved that it could work. And then the month that once we stepped away, that was actually, you've already got the right people involved. You've connected the support. We've identified where we might need some additional specialist resource from external to the organization, signed off. That actually a month later, they'd actually start to get to the numbers where they're 20 times the amount of volume of the calls, and then moving from prototype to then outlining, okay, how they could really productionize that in a real automated, solid way. So that was one of the examples where it's really cool that it was very much, it was happening as we were then outlining the kind of, this is what it's going to take you to almost some of the costs and further investment into the future.
One of the fun parts, when we were building this strategy, we went to the steerco saying, right, here are the use cases that we need to focus on. They're really exciting. There's big benefits case behind each one. They're actually quite easy to get done in the scheme of, being able to stand some of these up. And actually, one of the members of the steerco said, why are we focused on this? Everyone else is doing it. We need to do something different. And so we really took that learning, because we were so convinced, with the client team that we were working with, that no, these are the right use cases to be focused on for your business, and everyone behind the scenes are really excited by it. But actually, it was our own storytelling. And so the following time we went to the steerco, we actually then did a demo and brought it to life. And within seconds, everyone was just bought into it and just said, right, how quickly can we get this done? So it comes back to how kind of doing this in an agile way, and actually using those demos to really bring to life the value that you can do. Almost that moment just was worth a million words versus having it on paper in terms of this is what the use case is about. It was really amazing to see.
So can I kind of step back into like a macro level and say, everyone's talking about AI. There's lots of management consultancies out there, but what you appear to have done is find a way to meld agility with AI. How did your clients, because you would have had someone from the client side that actually commissioned you, how did they respond to that? Why did you get the piece of work, and then overall, what was their response to what you'd done? Because I think it's kind of unusual what you've actually done, and that's what I really want to find out about.
Yeah, I can take a stab, and then Paul, I'd love your kind of reflections as well. I think one of the reasons why the client went with us was because of our long-standing relationship, where we'd kind of proven that we're very hands-on but focused on value. So I think they'd had a number of discussions with and a lot of bigger consultancies, big four consultancies, and that talked about the need for an AI strategy, but it was very big investment, very big kind of partnerships over time, and dare say a lot more theoretical. Whereas I think because of some of those principles that we practice, which are based around agility, ours is very much around how can we get into proving the value as quickly as possible. Now we need to align everyone intent, make that tangible, but it's then about let's define the assumptions that are going to start to get us on the journey and then test them. And I think so that was where there was an option where our client could have picked a bigger brand name, but they had more fear that it would be another theoretical, big, chunky, 150-page slide deck of all the things that the AI could be and will be in the future, which wouldn't have shifted the needle on them and their performance in the near term. And that was the pressure they're facing. It's a very entrepreneurial business of, show me the money.
Yeah.
And so I guess because that's baked into our approach, that's why they went with us. And it was with all these things, there's the risk, and I think we went in eyes open on both sides in terms of, look, we're tried and trust in terms of our approach, but this AI question is very new and dare I say scary. But actually, the end result of that is that our client is super happy. There's tangible value that is clear up and down the organization, and it's actually driven the right understanding from that tangible value. So we were kind of ticking the boxes that people get it more in terms of what we're trying to do. Leadership understand the role they have to play rather than saying, hey, show me the money with AI. It's more about, okay, actually, here's what our role in defining some of those parameters, those objectives. And then we've seen enough to know, and we've got the clarity on what we need to do to support those specialists. Let's go ahead. So, Paul, I'd say our client was, big grin on his face.
So tangible value, and I'm just going to qualify back to you guys. I'm ex Big Four consultancy, and
won't hold it.
No. Delivering a 600 to 800 page PowerPoint is normal,
yes,
and is a deliverable. But actually, quite rightly, in the context of Agile, it's not a value point, and I think that again, I'm really fascinated by your process. And a lot of people won't say Agile is process, but it's fundamentally process. Process with behavior, with an intense desire to solve a problem and deliver value. And I just think that's really fascinating. So thank you very much for that insight.
Yeah, maybe just to kind of add to what Michael was saying, I think what we see, and we'll loop in Emily in a second because I think it really fits to what we had in healthcare. There is this huge gap between strategy and then execution. And I think the reason why our client came to us is to say, we just don't want the theoretical view on this. We need to land the budget to enable us to actually then start to create, the use cases and the prototypes, but we need to do it really rapidly and actually help bridge it into that execution piece. And so to Michael's point, what we came out with is that we chunked up investment decisions to say, look, this is, the next iteration of some of these use cases. We need to now go improve the value, or our client does, before we come back and actually ask for the next iteration of budget to then go and build it out. And so that bridge, even now when we finished the work, kind of at the end of last year, we know that they've been able to move straight into execution and now we're into that value delivery phase rather than having to, go through a heavy mobilization period. They were just naturally able to iterate into it. And I think that's kind of where bringing agility really helps in defining strategy straight through to execution. And actually it's perfect segue because in a totally different scenario where we're talking healthcare and people's lives, the same principles created a huge amount of value.
So in a totally different industry, but facing a similar problem and a similar ask, one of our clients that I worked with recently was a kind of leading healthcare diagnostic company, private company, not public, kind of in the healthcare space. But they were really struggling to get the budget approved to overhaul their bookings process, so how they can book patients in for diagnostic treatment or testing rather. So their struggle was that the COO brought us in to kind of say, help me get my team aligned on what we're actually asking leadership for, help me define the kind of business case and strategy to put together this ask, because she knew it was more than just a technology ask, but the kind of leadership team was only seeing this ask around the booking process as fixing the telephony system. And so kind of what we did with them is, first of all, aligning on what was the problem. So similar to what Michael was talking about at that company, what we did is get a kind of cross-functional team of leaders and also kind of people that were actually working in the bookings process in a room, first of all, map out that bookings process journey, the customer journey of, okay, I've been referred to this company because there's a suspicion that I could have cancer. Obviously, that's quite a scary time in this person's life. What are then the journey steps that they have to go through at the company to actually get a scan and then get a result from their doctor? And surprisingly, it was actually the first time that a few of these people had heard about different aspects of the customer journey. And it was kind of a light bulb moment for these leaders to say, oh, wow, this is not just a technology problem. It's an operational problem. It's a process problem. It is a technology problem. Here are the big problems to solve. How do we go about doing it? So really our task was to create that strategy and that business case to say, this is how we'll tackle this problem of helping people get scans faster to enable faster diagnosis. So obviously, hugely impactful problem to solve. And again, using principles of agility to define that strategy, we were able to do that in really just about 6 weeks.
Do you know, it's probably not surprising. I went wow when I heard the information because I was quite shocked. But then actually, it's probably a lot of organizations that are in that similar situation where actually they've never actually seen the full journey or understood the full journey. And where the 9 times out of 10 where they think the problem is, when you actually do root them through, they kind of go, oh. And that must have been quite scary for them because then what their original idea of what they thought was I'm going to use that, the problem, they're then probably, I'm guessing they became overwhelmed when they found actually there's multiple areas of evolvement or improvement that is needed. How did you manage that?
Yeah, so I think the way that we were brought in and that engagement was structured is it was really just that short piece of work at first, which then I guess highlighted everyone on, wow, yeah, there is a lot of problems to solve, that we need to solve this. And then that gave us permission to then set up a team to kind of build that strategy and that business case to say, this is what we're planning to do. This is how much money we need to do it. This is how we've come up with this answer. So yes, it was overwhelming, but I think it worked in the favor of us and the team because then it said, right, we actually have some budget to put behind putting a strategy and a roadmap together for solving this problem. So I think the overwhelm was helpful.
So there's one of the things about anything medical is always got unknown unknowns in it. And so how you deal with that is kind of critical to the positive outcome. How did you manage to cope with unknown unknowns? I mean, it is a particularly horrific scenario because cancer is usually ancillary to other facets of human health. So how did you cross-cut and deal with that kind of view of the whole person and not just the cancer?
I don't know whether we really tackled that. Obviously, that's like a huge problem. It's quite, yeah, it's a good question though. I do think in terms of unknown unknowns, I think the way that we built the strategy using an agile approach through sprints and building a mindset within the team that we had working with us of action before perfection and testing things and kind of being willing to put something down because it was our best guess and then saying, that's our line in the sand. We're going to go towards that idea. We're going to say, yeah, we're going to allow our booking agents to, for example, work hybrid. We're not going to force everyone to come into a singular office because we think our best guess, and based on the research that we have and from the team that we have in the room, that's our best guess. If our strategy shows us and our results show us that that's not the best result and we're not getting the results that we need and the detection rates that we're looking for, then we can change that. So we instilled this principle of action but before perfection, test and learn, and not assuming that we knew everything up front and assuming that things would change rather than assuming what might happen.
And you basically just described the diagnostic process.
Yeah.
So, in a healthcare environment, doctors don't know. They have indicators and they do tests to try and find. It's kind of like finding the corners of a puzzle and then filling in as you go. So I just wanted to enliven what you're saying because what you're saying is really interesting because it's bringing agile back into the healthcare sector, but from a slightly different perspective. And I just think that's really quite interesting.
One thing I was just going to add to Emily's answer was because I was loosely involved at the start of this. Emily and Paul did all the great thinking, but we, when looking at their current context, the journey mapping that we did was customer journey mapping. So it was very much centered around the customer experience, so bringing in some design thinking principles, and we also did some kind of empathy mapping about the different customer personas that would go for this, which brought a different lens that that audience hadn't necessarily applied to some of the process, and because they'd focus on the more the technology process, sometimes actually meant that connection to the customer people going through this
Patient,
journey
patient
wasn't
experience.
involved. So that was something that we did bring early on, and I think that was a real big that helped shift the mindset about why this was also so important when this company is facing a number of different, okay, we've got a million things we could spend money on. Actually, this helped actually connect. Well, one, we need to do this, improve that journey, but also this is why, because they're the people that matter the most.
It brings in that human factor side. If you think about it, with a lot of organizations, when it's, say, technology or things like that, you don't have as much of a human factor. But when you're dealing with this, especially when it's cancer, so many people have either been affected in the world. This is a cherished subject for me. It's either been affected in the world or knows somebody. So you've got actually a very big emotional side on here as well. And a big, you can actually emotionally and humanly connect to this. I don't know if it's making sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Which can bring in a whole nother side to it.
But emotions can also debilitate people. And make them. So I had a nice chat with one of the heads of one of the cancer organizations a few years ago on a plane, and she was saying how difficult it is to get how people are feeling about the process they're going through. And I suggested cultural probes, which is basically a way for them to engage, which is basically give out 10 postcards with pre-addressed and stamped, and they can just write that day how they're feeling. And they took it up and did it nationally. It was free advice, because what we're trying to do here is bring to the fore all the possibilities of how to make things better. And that's what you're trying to do, is enliven your clients' teams to understand how they can better engage, and obviously that helps the organization, but it really, really helps the person suffering from cancer or the advocate that's supporting them.
Exactly. And what was really lovely in this example was the power of that cross-functional team to actually really harness against what they were trying to drive. And again, here it was the amount of care they had to get to that outcome was phenomenal. But, we even had like the finance lead that was then coming up with ideas of how they could test and learn, with the technology, mapping out, kind of some of the process elements. And you're not in your box in terms of I'm in finance, so I've only got you here. Suddenly everyone is empowered to have a perspective. But they've got a different understanding of the business in different dimensions that kind of led to this amazing kind of suggestion of how they should move forward.
Yeah, and I was going to say, one of the ways that we often start a new engagement and mobilize a team is we create something called an awesome statement, which is basically a vision for the team. And in the case of this example, that was, increasing the speed at which we can detect cancer, which I think definitely everyone on this call, and I've spoken to Pyle while I was on the engagement. It's such a, as you were saying, Sabrina, such a emotional topic. And I think when you put the vision in terms of, this is real people's lives, it's real healthcare, it's really a really important cause. And then you mobilize a team of people who, one, care about the business because they've been working there, but two, can clearly see how the work they're doing impacts real life and real healthcare. And even for me, working on the engagement with them, how that is actually impacting people. It's quite not rare, but it's not often that the work that you're doing as a consultant is so easily tied to something so important. And I think that, again, helped us move at the speed that we did, and also just made you feel good about the work you were doing at the end of the day.
I love it. No, and you're right as well. As a consultant, there's some, I was actually talking to someone about this the other day. There's some jobs that you love your job and you love what you do for a living. There's some jobs it's kind of a lot of it sometimes rinse and repeat, because you're doing the same thing. But when you do get those opportunities where you feel like your work is actually making a difference and you can emotionally invest in it, it does make
Mhm.
massive change. That's great. So here's a question. I think I'll ask it to you first, Emily, and then I'm going to do you, Michael, with both your subjects. What was the most challenging side? What was the most challenging?
That you feel safe to share.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
So I think for me, because we only really had 6 weeks to get this strategy together, and we were working with a team who, as we said, was a cross-functional team. So we had finance, we had risks, we had a PMO lead, we had a group of people who were used to working kind of in their own lane, and within the hierarchy of their organization. So it took a little while to kind of pull them out of their normal traditional way of working and their normal way of thinking about what they're allowed to do, and saying, we have been put together, this team of people, because you have the expertise and because you're empowered to deliver something. And you don't have to go ask the head of HR for permission to come up with ideas. We'll keep them involved throughout our kind of sprint process and how we're building this strategy. But you're empowered and you're allowed to think and create. And it was really, as Pyle said, powerful. But it did take a little while to kind of get that to click in people. But once it did, it was amazing.
Wow. So yourself, Michael, what
Well,
was your biggest challenge in your area?
see if I can match Emily's answer. Might be a bit of an obvious one, but it was leadership alignment. This organization has been very successful, is very successful, facing into a new area, and actually um, the differing views of whether it was an opportunity one, but also understanding of how of the relevance and the relevance in what areas of an organization that's been very successful in what they're doing, to then look at this new space and then try and one, get the attention that it needs, but also get that alignment on, is it a now opportunity? And then if it is, once you've got that, then also how we can roll it out. And that we had a bit of a journey at the start to then look at how we can get everyone on the same page, in terms of how much a priority it was, and also what the opportunities could be. So I remember actually one of our early sessions with the leadership team, we had regular steercos in our kind of almost our sprint structure cadence. How we broke this apart, and we had a set of assumptions of what some of the top opportunities are. We went to a leadership steerco, and actually within the session, those were then spun around, turn around. Those aren't the top priorities, which was quite a difficult meeting to present and be part of. But it illustrated actually the power of bringing everyone together early on, because we kind of torpedoed those assumptions, realized we had to go back, but it also then forced out, well, where is everyone's head looking at this? But it made some uncomfortable early few weeks of just forcing that out to then continue on the journey. That by end of it, everyone's kind of saying, "Yeah, okay, we're all in alignment, and these are the top opportunities." So that was probably the biggest challenge. I don't know, Paul, if you'd add anything to that.
Hey, look, I was across both, but I think from a JCURV standpoint, it's super intense. When you're working on a sprint basis in 2 weeks and you're iterating a whole strategy in like 6 to 8 weeks, it's really fast paced. And to Michael's point, those early, those kind of constant check-ins with the leadership team on this is the thinking, is so powerful because you're pivoting as you go. So then when you finish, there isn't a grand unveil of like, here's your strategy, because everyone's already seen it in multiple iterations. And it's taking the leaders on the journey to kind of change their mindset of, their role that they need to play, and they've got to lean in because of the pace in which we're all working. I think it's been the fascinating part. And I think, as we talked about before, the power of the demos whether it be, on the AI side or actually even in, what Emily was saying, just demoing out, some of the technology, demoing out, okay, this is the new flow, kind of starts to bring it to life. And that's really important because no one wants to read the PowerPoint decks, actually.
That's absolutely amazing. Well, thank you ever so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I believe I'll let a sneaky bit out. We've got some more from you guys at some point. So, but thank you ever so much, everybody. It's been so interesting, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Pleasure.